Bayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang mag-ibig, elas ng sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuya ka ng mag-ibig, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng bagaw, ay hinatang tula, tawid sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iibig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan ang ay mag-iibig. Luman ang araw ng walhagit pagsinta, mo'y langit sa piling mo. Ang hinigaya ng pagkay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Through the dreadful darkness, we shall be the light and lead a path to wisdom. Our will to be our light. To those in pain and suffering, we shall hear a call. With arms to care and comfort, from answer above all, to faith the brighter future, bound in unity, the friendly college of physicians we shall be, hand in hand building a stronger nation, this in Filipino nephrologists, committed to our noble call, in dedicated service to God and mankind, we've consecrated our minds. O Philippine Society of Nephrology, entreat us to be in unity, enlighten and equip us with fulfilling our mission and vision, with direction from the Lord. We are all Filipino nephrologists, committed to our noble call, in dedicated service to God and mankind, we've consecrated our hearts. We reach out to our patients with respect for human life, with dignity and integrity, in love and compassion for their undying hope. We are all Filipino nephrologists, committed to our noble call, in dedicated service to
Welcome to tonight's webinar entitled The Ethical Physician in Cyberspace. I am your moderator for tonight's webinar, Dr. Gingerlita alias Samonte, the head of the Committee on Media Communication of the PCP. So, to start off with this webinar series, tonight's webinar is a very special one for two reasons. First reason is this is a partnership between the Philippine College of Physicians and the Philippine Society of Nephrology. And second, the topic that we are going to discuss tonight is a very timely, relevant topic because we all know that because of this pandemic, we physicians, including our patients, have been very active in the digital world. So to start off with our webinar, may I call on the President of the Philippine College of Physicians, Dr. Limpin, to give us the opening remarks.
Good evening to everyone. In behalf of the officers and Board of Regents of the Philippine College of Physicians, I welcome you to tonight's discussions on the ethical physician in the cyberspace. With the COVID-19 pandemic, we lived and are still living through a world crisis, the likes of which we haven't seen in our lifetime. The pandemic created new challenges for everyone, especially to us in healthcare, as we try to adapt to an operating model in which working from home, conducting scientific discussions using virtual platforms, and doing telemedicine, all these have become the new normal. Our medical organizations have to accelerate digital transformation, something that we have talked about 4 or 5 years ago and expected to come our way in 10 years' time. But here we are right now, facing this hastened digital transformation. And with this transformation comes greater challenges. We definitely have to address concerns on cyber crimes and cybersecurity. The two are opposites of each other, but they cannot exist without each other. And from this will arise a myriad of ethical issues, ranging from minor to vital. So the rapid development of technology will surely involve even more ethical concerns. So today, the topic is quite timely, and I hope that each one of us listens intently. And from this listening, maybe we can do our own introspection and find out whether we have crossed the line. And at the end, I hope that we will be able to correct any unethical behavior that we might have committed. Now, having this in mind, I want to leave you this message from Henry Ford. The only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing. I hope we all learn from this discussion. Again, good night and happy learning to everyone.
For your opening remarks. So to start off with the lecture proper, I would like to remind the fellows in training from the different nephrology training program that you will be submitting your reaction paper for this webinar series. So please listen. So you will make your reflection paper and you will be submitting it next week, Wednesday again next week. So this is just a reminder to our fellows in training in nephrology. So to start off, I would like to introduce our speakers for tonight. Our first speaker is Dr. Patrick Gerald L. Moral. He is an associate professor and past chairman of the Department of Medical Ethics at the University of Santo Tomas, Faculty of Medicine and Surgery. He is a fellow of the Philippine College of Physicians, a fellow and a past president of the Philippine College of Physicians and the Philippine Society of Sleep Medicine, a faculty of the International Chair in Bioethics, World Medical Association Cooperation Center, and a member of Professionalism and Bioethics Committee at the UST Hospital Ethics Module Developer. So that is our speaker, Dr. Moral. This will be followed by our reactor. I will introduce our reactor. Our reactor is Dr. Carlo Nimesio B. Trinidad. He is the head of the Dagupan Doctors Villaflor Memorial Hospital Renal Unit. He's a member of the Committee on Website, Committee on Patient Protection, Committee on Public Health of the Philippine Society of Nephrology. He was the Chief Fellow from the year 2016 to 2018 in Adult Nephrology Fellowship Training Program at the UPPGH, where he also took his internal medicine residency training program. He's well known as the creator of the Hello Kidney by Dr. Carlo Trinidad. Is a patient, which is a patient education Facebook page about various kidney health and disease-related topics. So he is going to be our reactor tonight. So after all this, I know you're all very excited to listen to this very interesting and timely topic. I may now ask Dr. Moral to give his lecture. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ginger. I hope everyone can hear me. I appreciate the fact that I was introduced by a former clerk of mine. I just want to make sure, can I be heard well?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you very much. So I plan to speak hopefully for the next just 40 minutes, but I want to make it interactive. So for those of you who have joined menti.com and use the voting code, thank you. For the others, you can scan it with your camera using the QR code so you can join, and that can direct my discussions and make it more interactive and really bring you into the discussion. So I'm here to talk about the ethical physician in cyberspace. But I want to tell you first that my main area of interest is ethics, but I dabble a lot in technology. Although I have no formal training in it, perhaps my input will be purely experiential and not really supported. And let me now go to the survey, and I will now give you a series of questions. All right. So based on the questions that we had earlier, apparently, most of our attendees are from the NCR, with a few from Luzon and 2 from the Visayas region. I do believe I saw some people I know online. All right, so the next question is, I have read the Code of Ethics of the PMA, PRC, PCP, American Medical Association. Just drag the icon. If you strongly agree, that means you've read the whole thing. If you haven't read it, then you just put it there in the center. Or if you have read it somehow or partly, maybe in the middle. Okay, so it's interesting to note that at least for the PCP, because it's a PCP activity, quite a number of the attendees have actually read the guidelines. Although if you notice, no one has really read it fully in terms of at least the averages. All right, so let me go to the next question. How much time do you spend online? So I know we've just come from the pandemic, but how much time do you generally spend online? It is less than an hour, more than 8 hours? Okay, that's very Filipino. For the ones who said 2, 5. In fact, the average for the Filipino is actually 10 hours. No? Or I'm asking you online, and this is not social media. So it's sort of a toss-up between 1 to 4, and okay. So so this gives me really good feedback for how to go about my talk. Let's go to the next part. Are you aware of your digital footprint? Yes, no, I don't know what a digital footprint is. So let's see where we go here. Okay, there are some people who don't know what it is. 4 have said yes. So it's nice to see as you move on. All right, very good. Okay, it's nice to see. It's a distribution. No? We don't know who here. More likely the yeses are what we call digital natives or the younger ones. And most of us who belong to the no or I don't know what it is are probably more of digital immigrants. All right, let's go to the next one. What word comes to mind when you hear social media? So I just like you to type the word that comes to your brain when you hear social media. What comes to your mind? So let's see. I'd like to see the common things that you think about. Facebook is common. Facebook, it's public. Yung iba, sabi nila, they understand when you hear it, bardagulan or bardahan. No? TikTok, fake news is something that came out. fake news Facebook. So apparently it's compatible with what the common usage of the Filipino is. It's really it's a Facebook centric nation. Messenger is also common, so we do use it a lot for communication. Twitter is getting a bigger item now, and Instagram. So in fact, in the Philippines, it's Facebook. Surprisingly, no one mentioned YouTube. And YouTube actually is overtaking Facebook as the most common social media platform that is currently being used. All right, let's see now the next question. How much time do you spend on social media? Remember, I asked you first, the internet. What about social media? Is it less than an hour? Is it 1 to 4? No, you tend to get lost. No, I probably will belong to the 4 to 8 hours, somewhere in between, intermittently. But doing cumulatively, it will go around maybe sometimes 3, sometimes 4, because I do spend a lot of time in terms of my messaging also using the Facebook page. So there are 3 who go for more than 8 hours. So very interesting in terms of the numbers that we've had. All right. Then next is the social media platform I use frequently is it Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram? So we're just trying to see how often maybe you use all of them, then you put strongly agree for all of them. Okay, YouTube. All right. So I think a lot of people have learned to plant, to cook, to bake using YouTube during the pandemic. But basically, Facebook has really kept us connected with everyone else. All right. So Twitter is not so much, although I'm sure Carlo will encourage us to mostly go on Twitter too in terms of discussions and networking. Instagram, all right. And then I think we do have some young colleagues. I have TikTok, but I've never used it myself to put in content. All right. And lastly, I think this is my last question for this set. I use social media for, so you rank them from the most to the least. Is it for relaxation or fun, socializing, connecting, advocacy, politics, revenue, or healthcare? So you can just rank. So far, relaxation and fun is the most common one. Advocacy is going up. Healthcare is going up. All right. So revenue. So apparently only few actually have monetized their social media. That means you earn from it. Okay. It's either you sell or you actually earn from the things you load. Socializing and connecting. So we see that healthcare actually ranks 3rd so far among the utility for this one. All right. And advocacy, politics is low, revenue is the lowest, but healthcare does rank 3rd. All right, as I said, I think that is my last question. So let me now go back to the formal lecture in itself and do the discussions. All right, so let's talk about where we go from here. So as I said, I do use Twitter, although Twitter expresses my thoughts primarily, and my Facebook is really just my journal. But I have a page which I use for my practice, so my patients can access information that I have curated. Now, these are just the QR codes for the codes of ethics I've mentioned, and apparently we've not really read them all. So on the left, you have the code of ethics of the PRC, and you may want to know that. And then the PCP is the one on the right side. So you can take some pictures of this to have an idea about what to read, and maybe you can read this in your downtime or spare time. Let's talk about the new reality. The new reality is, whether you're online or not, someone will have written something about you. So you have a public presence, whether you like it or not. And this is from a nice lecture that was done by Dr. Joyce Lee, who has a master in public health, where she spoke about the doctor as a designer. Now, when you talk about the internet, it's basically like an actual space. So your virtual space or cyberspace, as was put in the title that was given to me, it's like your bathroom, your bedroom, your living room, and your kitchen. I'd say your messaging service, maybe between you and someone else, might be your bathroom. But remember, like my bathroom here has a window, so someone can even take a look and hack it. The bedroom is a more intimate space where you have most of your friends who come in. This might be your Facebook. Now, an area for open discussions like a living room may be Twitter, so that might be your living room. And an area where you cook up new recipes and come up with something. This might be your TikTok or even YouTube. These are for content creators. So these are all actual spaces in a way where we interact with other people. And the new reality is, you want to know, are your patients talking about you? And most importantly, do you know what they're saying? And that's where we're talking about digital footprint. When the patients search online on the platforms they choose, are they finding your content or information about your practice? And lastly, as we said, we have no control about what people say about us. No? I've been trolled twice in my lifetime, as in heavy trolling. But at the end of the day, you have 100% control over your own message. And that at the end of the day, that's important. And that will define your footprint later on. So at the heart of digital media, it's basically just about relationships. No, it's just about communication. And that's where we have to build it up. Our skills in communicating, we just have to transfer it from real life or the actual face-to-face setting to a digital setting. So as we said, establishing a digital footprint rooted as a social media presence is about a lot of things. It's about trying to educate, engage other people, and sometimes we grow our audience. Like Carlo has his own page for kidney disease, so he grows his own audience, and hopefully our goal is to improve outcome, compliance, and potentially sometimes also improve our practice, because at the end of the day, we may be in a vocation and a profession, but this is also our occupation, and we do earn or make a living from it. And we'd like to, of course, grow our practice as well. So why should doctors establish a social media digital footprint? So one, it's already becoming a necessity. You will see almost all centers and even major physicians abroad have their own social media page. And somehow those who decide to use social media need leadership, guidance, and best practice examples. Unfortunately, our code of ethics guides do not have contents really on social media, and it has to be strengthened. They have to be used truly tactical how-tos. We have to give the doctors how-tos and guides. And remember that basically we humans are innately social, and health itself is social as well. But the problem is healthcare itself is not social. It does not keep us connected, and this needs to change. And of course, we want to learn from our more experienced physicians, senior or young. They have experience and they have a repository of knowledge that has to be shared with a wider audience, because at the end of the day, we are a sharing profession. And this is a basic reminder of what you do about digital footprint. That means when you're online, it's really about be yourself, but try to be the best form of yourself. We're not saying be someone else, but the best version of yourself that you actually are. Be careful about what you share, where you share, and with whom you share. And sometimes we do not know that they're actually getting information about us. And these are basically the crumbs we leave with the cookies that we approve. Then be smart about the sites you visit, emails you open, and links you click. I'm sure you're familiar with nudges, no? When you just look at furniture, and then you'll notice all the ads that come out later are all about furniture. It's because of the digital footprint that you've left behind. And these are used to track you and influence you. So because we know that we live in the digital world, we also have to talk about the digital citizenship. That means we have to be able to engage positively, but also critically and competently in the digital environment. So it's not all positive, no? It's not all good vibes. There has to be critical engagement. We have to make use of effective communication as a skill, and we can also do creation in terms of content. And the practice forms social participation should be there, but they should be respectful of human rights and dignity. And we have to be responsible in the use of the technology. We should not use it to bully or create harm for others. Now, this is from the Committee of Europe in terms of the definition. And I think this is a nice, more eloquent, detailed explanation. That means digital citizenship is a competent, positive engagement with digital technologies where we create, work, share, socialize, investigate. And as you mentioned, kanina, play was one of the most important things, communicate and learn. And our goal is to actively participate, although some may not do so. They may just lurk, as we'll mention later. But you have to do it responsibly. And you impart here your values, your skills, your attitudes, and knowledge. And it involves communities, whether it's our own community in the hospital, it can be local, national, but it can even be global. In fact, some of the speakers I've gotten for conventions are people I just know over Twitter. It's because of my global community. And it's at all levels. That means it's not only medical, but there has to be some political, economic, social, and even cultural and intercultural involvement. Now, it talks about being involved, not just learning in a classroom or in a physical setting, but it's a double process of lifelong learning, which may be either formal or informal based on just what you read. And there is always the effort at continuously defending human dignity. All right, so these are parts, they say, of digital citizenship. We have to know how to manage our privacy to make sure no one hijacks our personality. We have to do critical thinking. It does not disappear when we go in the virtual world. Digital footprints, as we've said, but we also have to be able to convey digital empathy to be empathetic to the needs of others and their feelings online as well. We talk about cybersecurity management, safeguarding against hacking. We have to be careful about cyberbullying. We do know that this happens, and sometimes it's our colleagues who bully others as well. We talk about screen time management because we do spend a lot of time online. And of course, as we said, our identity in real life must also be transmitted through the digital platform. So this was a study in terms of a sociology study emphasizing this for patients. When they surveyed patients, they said that there's an intersection between biosociality, which means it's defined by the pathological factors that are present in our patients, and then by the technosociality, which is defined by the technology. So the pathologies they may experience are now conveyed to other patients and even to the doctor. And this may be done via technology. And it's already reshaped the social relations and interactions we have with our patients regarding health. It's allowed them exposure to other patients in other countries and even feedback from other doctors in other countries as well. So it's opened up a new set of rights and responsibilities for health citizens. So what are responsibilities for digital health citizenship? And these are for the patients, I've said. When they put in information in an app, that data can be used for medical research. They can also inform us and educate us on matters that are unknown and less experienced. So unless they've undergone chemotherapy and had the adverse effects of it, the doctor cannot know that. It's the patient who will tell us that that has happened. It seeks and offers reassurance in the absence of easily accessible advice. So in the Philippines, there are islands that are so far off that they cannot access physicians. And hopefully, this technology and this digital health citizenship allows them now to seek that care, and it allows feedback. The feedback is important, and the feedback is important for us in healthcare in order to correct problems that we have in terms of organization and delivery. Now, it's important also to understand that this is something we may not want, but the patients have the right to publicly criticize healthcare providers, especially when they've not been heard. So it is one of their rights to do so. Our problem is that there is no guidance for them, unlike for us in healthcare. Now, there's a duty, of course, also on their part to provide us feedback because we cannot improve things that we do not know. All right. The challenge is, remember that digital citizenship is partially algorithmically produced. So the social media platforms take notes of the things we visit, the things we like, and expose us to the things that we like. Or sometimes they try to make us engage by exposing us to the things we do not like or the things we express a strong opinion against. And that's the way they keep us hooked. Now, it's not accompanied, as we said, by systematic forms of accountability. Therefore, we have to have our own personal accountability. And we talk about the ethics of biocitizenship, Now, it's important when I talk about ethics, we do not compare ourselves to others. It's not a matter of who's better than whom. It's a matter of comparing ourselves to our own self to see if we have improved over a course in time. Now, I just want to point out that ethics is not etiquette. Etiquette is just simply cultural, deciding what is rude and polite, while ethics refers to something that is based on moral principles, what is wrong or right. So we'll try to discuss it and differentiate. And I just want to point out, let's start with messaging. I violate a lot of the etiquette in terms of digital messaging. So whether it's Viber, it's Messenger, WhatsApp, or whatever you use, these are reminders for etiquette. Hone your tone. That means they don't hear our voice. So the words express our tone. Whether you're sarcastic or not, it cannot be conveyed usually via text messaging. So you make sure to hone your tone. Keep it short. Don't do full paragraphs. Don't multi-message in terms of short messages because these are difficult to follow also, especially if someone inserts a message in between. Share with care. We'll talk about that. Know your audience. That means know who the group of people you're talking to is and don't leave them hanging. If someone asks you a question, do try to answer that. I'm guilty of sometimes doing that myself. And abide by the quick reply. And give up ghostings. For the young people, ghosting, Yan, dinedate ka and then suddenly disappears. That's ghosting. And we can also ghost people online. Practice good exit get. That means if you're getting disturbed by a lot of the Viber things, make sure you know how to leave properly by signing off in style and saying that you are leaving the digital messaging group. So these are etiquette and these are not ethics, but I think they serve as a good starting point also for proper behavior. Now, let's talk about social media. Social media is the mainstay and where we have spent a whole deal of our time with in the pandemic. So we'll try to discuss this. No? So if you notice, social media has a lot of uses for the general public, the patients, and the physicians. If you notice, the patients' use actually matches that equally of the physicians. That means they can get health information, we can provide answers, they can get answers to medical questions, we can have dialogues with them. Data can be provided by patients, and we can get data on their experiences, and they can share it among others. It can also be used for intervention, health promotion, and this is important, improving health literacy and empowering them to be able to do that instead of enabling them. It reduces stigma too, like with HIV and other diseases, and it provides online consultations. For the general public, there are certain uses, but we see that it is really useful for us, between us and our patients. And what's the reason why you should be on social media? Again, this is from Dr. Joyce Lee. She says that you can receive real-time information about topics that are important. No, it's very nice, especially when you go on Twitter. Things that are just being studied or they're thinking about, you can see that in real time, and it's very easy. And you can network also on sites like LinkedIn as a professional. You can flip the clinic visit. That means that's what I'm doing right now. So before I resume my face-to-face clinic, I start my conversation online and continue that with the face-to-face. It stamps out misperceptions. I'll talk about that in terms of misinformation later on. It allows us to share health information, and it's good that it allows us to witness how social media has been indispensable to physicians who can now consult a global community. An example is in Syria, no, where they did not have doctors after the damage that had been wrought on their country. They were able to access physicians to help them out. And if you don't want to involve yourself, you can just lurk. That means you just watch, listen, and learn from patients and caregivers. Remember, you do not have to engage, but this is something that can be done. All right. How do you get started? Accept that your identity is already defined by the internet. But we can actually change it too by making our own footprint based on what we do. But when you go on there, there is something that's already defined by the internet. But don't be overwhelmed by social media. It's easy to shut off if you don't want to be there. Now, remember, my lectures before will always emphasize that please separate your private and public self. But remember, it's hard to have that dichotomy. Somehow there will always be an overlap that you can't really separate your private and public self. You can have separate accounts for the private and public, but since you in real life cannot separate that, use your social media etiquette. And of course, create your initial online presence. All right. So these are just the reminders. If you're not on social media, do's and don'ts. So I'll just read through them. Don't mix business with pleasure. Use caution in posting and tagging photos, especially your colleagues, because your colleagues may not want that photo tagged. Be self-centered in small doses. No, if it's very narcissistic and it's all your face the whole time, it's problematic. Understand that their sense of humor isn't universal. Some of it may be offensive. Don't be reactive and avoid oversharing. No? Sometimes too much information. And remember, if your grandkids can see this in the future, build a legacy for your future. Don't leave them an embarrassing family name. And don't misrepresent yourself, and don't drink and tweet. No? That's the worst thing to be online when you do not have full control of your senses. And understand each platform's best practices. And you can ask usually your colleagues. Like Carlo here is quite good in Twitter. You might ask him. So let's now discuss behavior on social media. Let's have some discussions here. All right. So I'll talk about moral discourse, virtue signaling. These are topics I've not discussed and I've not heard discussed, at least in the local setting, based on the ones I've attended. You know that if you're online now, ang daming nag-aaway, right? Bardagulan, bardahan. So there's already a caustic nature of public discourse on social media. And the problem is that we tend to self-select. I'm sure if you look at your friends list, most of them have the same thinking as you. Very few probably do not. And we congregate in homogeneous social groups. And the problem is we become an echo chamber environment where our positions are continuously reinforced and we have little exposure to other ideas. And that's why I like Twitter. Because unlike Facebook, which is like a reunion, it's a family reunion, Twitter exposes me to all the other ideas. Because if you're exposed to opposing viewpoints later on, and so you're so used to being homogenized, it will increase polarization, that you will not be open to other ideas and discussions. Now, the problem is sometimes when we're online, I have to keep this in check myself. Am I moral grandstanding? Because I seek status. Now, that means when I post something about an issue, am I driven to seek status within my community or my sphere of belonging? That means am I after some form of prestige? in terms of posting that. And we have to see whether there's status seeking via moral discourse. No? How do we know moral grandstanding? It's really defined by the motivation. That means I post it so people will like what I post. That's an example of moral grandstanding. So we have to make use of moral discourse in a better way and not for grandstanding. No? So it's not for self-promotion or status attainment per se. So that is something we have to keep in mind when we post something online. Now, this is different from social vigilantism. I think I'm guilty of this a lot. No, so I do have sometimes a desire to correct the incorrect social views of others. No? For example, someone using autism as a way to insult another electoral candidate because they're using autism as an insult. So that is something because I have relatives who had mental challenges, and it becomes something that is important to me. So it's focused on a public discourse that it seems you're willing to share and promote your views. No, you express outrage at social media engagements that display outrage too. So you sort of support that. So the goal there is not per se linked to status seeking, but a desire to correct social views. So this might be one thing you do. So just be mindful that you're not grandstanding. And these are interesting illustrations. No? Itong FFNI, sabi niya, I think this is the 5-factor narcissism index, whether you're aggressive, antagonism, or extroverted. Then you talk about social vigilantism, status seeking, and then general prestige seeking. They say this can influence either your political moral conflicts, especially if you're antagonistic, but they can also foster you to grow closer with others over moral or political issues. As you see, some people will do this for prestige and sometimes also for dominance, that you want to have dominance in your group. So this illustrates the structural model that has been proposed. However, this model also points to us what happens in terms of our behavior at baseline and after that. You see that all of those things would have the same input, but for prestige, it usually affects your first post, your baseline post. But if you want dominance, that means you continue posting, and your social media post 1 week later will be that. So do take a note, why are you posting? And if you're following up an issue on your posting, what is the reason for that? Now, what is virtue signaling? We talked about this in our ethics postgrad last week, and one of our speakers from the US, Dr. Sayed Tabatabay, discussed this, that sometimes we post the best version of ourselves, that we don't post the things that are negative, no? And sometimes this is disingenuous behavior. And that's why, for me, I don't mind sharing the fact that I have clinical depression, because I don't want people to think, that my life is perfect, that it's easy, that I'm just purely virtue, because there are things in my life that are not good. And I think people have to know that. And if that is something you can share and help someone else with, then that is good. So sometimes we are doing the right thing of exposing virtue, but it's for the wrong reason. So we have to make sure that when we expose virtue or our values, it's not in a way of gaining attention. It's not a grandiose way of gaining attention, but really helping out. So that is something that we have to look at. Now, another thing in the opposite side that we have to look at is toxic positivity. I see this a lot in some of our colleagues saying, dapat good vibes lang lahat. It's all good vibes. The problem with toxic positivity is that it demands positivity from people regardless of the challenges they face. Stay at home, at least alive ka. But they cannot support their family. So that was, for me, one of the most insensitive posts of doctors. Stay at home. And they say Filipinos are pasaway when they don't understand the challenges. And that is toxic positivity. It silences emotions and deters them from seeking social support. And once you do that, it demeans grief. You don't have the right to be sad, and makes people feel under pressure to pretend to be happy when in fact they're struggling. So these are examples. When a parent whose child has died, tell them at least they can have children. Or after a catastrophe, everything happens for a reason. Ang dalas nito that we hear this. Urging someone, look at the positive aspects of a loss. He's now resting. Or telling someone to get over their grief and focus on the good things. This was one thing that people kept telling when I had depression. You don't have a right to be sad because you have everything that you need in life. Labeling those who are positive as more likable than others who are not. And urging people to thrive no matter what adversity. Just like staying at home during the COVID pandemic, or brushing off someone's concerns by it like it could be worse. These are among the worst things that we can actually do online. So I do hope we take note that these are things that we do. And it's risks that we ignore real harm and we demean a person's loss. Sabi nga nila, we never lose grief. We grow bigger around the grief that we have. And that's an important thing when we don't demean the grief that people have. It has isolation and stigma. People will just shun engaging because they feel that they are negative influences. There are communication issues, and at the end of the day, it may also lower self-esteem. So how do we avoid this one? We can self-impose it on ourselves. Recognize that negative emotions are normal. It's all right to cry, and it's an important part of our experience. And we identify the emotions that we feel and name it to ourselves instead of avoiding them. Talk with trusted people about emotions, which is why it's important to have your tribe online, including negative feelings, and seek support from trusted friends and even a therapist. And I encourage really seeking professional help as well. Now, how do we avoid imposing it on others, especially online? Encourage people to speak openly about their emotions and be more comfortable with negative emotions. Avoid trying to have a positive response to everything a person says. There are times when things are negative, and it's all right to understand that it is a negative thing. And recognize that intense negative emotions often coincide with positive emotions. That means you feel the loss so much because you love that person so much. So these are things that we should do online to never demean losses. All right, so we're now down to the last parts of the discussion. These are a bit shorter because I think we can discuss this in the open forum. Hindi ka na to toxicin si Carlo, and I'll just have him react at the very end. So let's go back to our interactive. So I hope you're still online there, and I have some questions to ask you here. I am irritated when I see my colleagues do this online. Ay, hindi dapat endorse to. And I criticize colleagues, post personal rants, talk politics. Ay, endorse yan. When they endorse products, criticize colleagues, post personal rants, talk politics, make fun of patients. So, can you start answering too? Almost everyone is irritated about everything. All right. So in criticizing colleagues is a major issue, as well as posting personal rants. Not so much the endorsement. No, you don't really mind people endorsing products, make fun of patients. Okay, make fun of patients going high. Talk politics. Talk politics is not so high. Okay, so really criticizing, posting personal, and making fun of patients. So we'll focus a bit on that one. Do you believe you're an influencer? Yes, no, or you're not sure? What is an influencer? No, yes, unsure. But when we ask patients to take medications and then they get better, and these medications now are passed on to relatives and friends, oh, doctor is so good that he used it. Aren't you an influencer there? Diba? Okay, but anyway, so no. And 6 say yes, the rest are unsure. So thank you very much for your answers, guys. All right. Should a physician be an influencer? That's my next question. Should we be an influencer? Okay. So we have now a few. Kanina akala ko it's purely yeses. A smaller part say no. In fact, doctors are among the most trusted. So the way we use the influence is important. Should a physician earn money as a health influencer? If you're a health influencer, should you earn money from showing things online? Okay, one said yes, a big group say no, but the others say it depends, no? It depends on the circumstances. What is being influenced or what is being advertised or endorsed? I'll give you guidelines from our local guides. Okay, next one. Let's go now. When a colleague spreads misinformation online, what would you do? So these are the different options. Send him or her a private message, comment on his post to correct misinformation, report him to his department or institution. Remember, it's misinformation. Let's pretend it's like vaccine misinformation. Report him to his respective society and report the post to the social media platform. So they can actually take it down if there is enough feedback. It's okay. So most will really deal with it personally first. Send a private message. And if not, the following one will be to report him to the society and the institution. The last would be to comment. Actually, reporting to the platform is helpful because if there are enough people who actually have that, the platform will take it down. Okay, I think I'm influencing you now in terms of your answers, no? So, okay, I want it to be a spontaneous answer. So let's go back to the next one. How would you deal with a colleague who keeps posting disturbing content, no? Rank from first to last. Talagang lahat na lang ng disturbing, na di-disturb ka sa lahat, no? Kaya he keeps encouraging, let's say, killing. It's just disturbing to you. He keeps posting those things. What would you do? Call his attention, ignore, hide, unfollow, block, unfriend. So I'll talk about that. So block, okay, call attention. Okay, hide or unfollow na lang. It's nice how it keeps moving. Ignore. All right. But sometimes, remember that other people read their posts and doctors are among the most trustworthy. So by ignoring it, are we not allowing that to spread? Yung hide or unfollow to keep your sanity. And that's true. Our mental health is important. Okay, some will now call the attention, ignore, block, and friend. Okay, I appreciate all the responses. Now, what topics would you avoid discussing with your patients? Let's now go to the patients. What topics would you avoid discussing? Can I see your responses here? So I'm sure about a few topics that will come in already. These are commonly things we discuss. Politics. So far, anything else? I have only 2 respondents. Talaga it's politics na primarily. Anything else? Personal. Okay. Okay, 7. Talaga it's politics. 9. No? Personal. Religion. Okay, so religion is another difficult topic to consider. Personal, love life. Love life ba siguro yan, anti-vaccines. Okay, it's difficult, anti-vaccine. But should it be in monetary issues? Ivermectin. All right. I appreciate the responses. Monetary. So politics and personal, no? Not, okay, we don't burden our patients with our personal concerns, no? Because they're already coming to you with problems. Death, okay, death is difficult. Mistakes of other doctors. So we'll talk about a bit of that. All right. So I think I'm down to the last parts. I have to make sure I run on time. This was an ad during the Nazi era. The Nazi era saying that people from other races, as well as those with Down syndrome and mental disabilities, cost a lot of money for society to sustain. So if you're a physician in Nazi Germany, would you discuss this issue with the patients? Yes, with every patient? Yes, only with those affected, or no? So if they have no one with Down syndrome in the family, we'll not discuss it. Okay, let's see. So far, no one says yes with only with those affected. But this changed actually the perception of society towards those with mental health disabilities, and they found it right to start killing them off because they were a burden to society. So when you discuss issues like this with only those directly affected, it means that it does not cover the rest of the population, but it now causes a behavioral change. So I want to point that out. So this is interesting in terms of response. No? Okay, last 2 questions, I think. Do you discuss political topics with your patients? Never, sometimes, often, yes, always. Okay, so the sort of mix, no? Okay, so it's sort of a half and half. Well, often and always, but sometimes. Okay, I fall under the sometimes too, no? Just to put it there. For disclosure. Okay, it's a liver, it's a tie. If ever you would discuss a political topic with your patients, what would this involve? What topic, what aspect of politics would you discuss? Would it be in the US? They talked about the coverage, no? Okay, may mga votes. Okay, mga do not vote. Quality of healthcare. Okay, remember, this is a safe space, huh? And whatever people post, do respect what the people post. Vote wisely, please. Okay, so it's about what? Program platform, health programs, accomplishments, who they vote. Okay, so we'll discuss about this because voting is an issue, no? If voting impacts healthcare and the people they choose, wouldn't that be an important thing? Okay, thank you. I appreciate all the feedback from everyone. Okay, I'm not sure. I think this is my last one. Yes, that's it. So let me go now back to the lecture and just wrap it up. So this will be a shorter discussion and I'll just show you the guidelines. So for influencers, there are social media influencers now. And who are these? These are people with established credibility in an area. They have access to a huge audience. So between Carlo and myself, let's say in Twitter, I have 4 followers. I think Carlo has 14,000. So a lot of people will listen to him. And we have the ability to influence others to act based on what we recommend. Now, as I said, there's an opportunity to monetize this when people advertise on your site or you're asked to endorse a product. Now, that's the thing is this is from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and they said no, doctors are not ready. No, we're not ready at all to be social media influencers. This is example of Austin Chang, no, a doctor in the U.S., a young doctor who showed this in his TikTok, saying when Dr. Oz goes on TV, says that reopening school is okay because only 2 to 3% of the population will die. So this was good because he brought attention to it. But at the same time, they said, did he make people lose faith in the medical profession? So you see how challenging it may be. And what will be the concerns? No? So we have to seek informed consent from the ones if we're posting something about the patient too. What do we intend to post? Not just for consent for posting. What do we intend to post? Where it will be posted in the platform? For what purpose and to what audience? Now we have to record the consent and the circumstances behind it, and then of course obtain consent. Now remember, if we take pictures at work and post at work, our employers will have to have some say because we're doing it on time that we're employed. And this might be views, no? Posts and comments when you're at work. If the hospital premises are being used as settings for your photo shoot, if there's inappropriate use of equipment as props, or infection control, if you're having your cell phone, let's say, in an infected facility, and the potential for complaints, of course, from patients and relatives who are inadvertently caught with the photos. Now, just some guidance on posting. Don't discuss individual patients or their care. Sometimes we narrate funny stories, no, but patients can identify that. Don't bully, harass, or make gratuitous and unsubstantiated comments about individuals, including our colleagues. It's not appropriate to raise concerns about patient safety on social media. Direct it towards the necessary authorities and identify yourself as a doctor. That's why my handles on all my social media accounts are my actual names, because if patients look at it, they have to understand that. And how do we make sure it's ethical? Consider what your goals are. Be transparent. So you can use the hashtag #VerifyHealthcare to signify that you are committed to transparency, that they can check who you are. Get verified. You will see that blue or white check beside the name. That means these people are verified, and seek support. Right, I'm almost done. I think I'm going to run on time. The PCP PMA code says that for exposure for media, but this is not social media, this is general. It says we have to be well informed. All our names in the institution must be the ones that are mentioned. For articles, they must be evidence-based. For example, it's a blog. And we have to disclose potential conflicts of interest if relevant. No? For employed by the pharma company, or we're being paid to do so. And we could not commercially endorse any medical or health product. And this is one of the challenges now of influencers. Now, our responsibility is that we, in terms of what we post, because we're influencers, we cannot publish these things even online. Personal superiority, special certificates, even specific methods of treatment. This can just be done in the confines of your clinic or your residence. Now, what does a PCP say is our responsibility to the profession? We share our knowledge and and skills and expertise with colleagues, so that can be done via as an influencer. But we have to be truthful, avoid any form of involvement in advertisement or solicitation for commercial products that may make us less objective, and avoid conflicts of interest. No? And what are conflicts of interest? That means when we post material online, we should be open, no, to whether we earn from this. We have to declare financial or commercial interest in health organizations or the pharmaceutical companies too. And our goal is to be a positive physician influencer. That means if there's a sensation headline like ivermectin, we have to add context to that headline to avoid misleading information. And we have to remember that sometimes what we posted before may be wrong, so we already have to take it down or correct it as well. No? Kung dating recommendation, like as let's say, yung initial nating combinations for COVID, they're not true anymore. Make sure you take them down. And we be honest about what is known and what isn't known. So as the guide says for the PCP, so this is the PMA PRC, a physician should practice self-regulation, be upright, and you should use appropriate language. And we do see a lot of offensive language that already runs online. Now, what about interacting with other physicians? So we must deal with our colleagues also with respect, openness, and sensitivity. We must not speak ill of a colleague, although we've seen people fighting online. But however, we must communicate with them if they practice unethically or they engage in fraud or deception. And if they don't respond, report it to the authorities. Now, we have to be aware, what is cancel culture? Sabi nila, pag may ginawa kang mali online, you're canceled automatically. You're ostracized, or you're expelled from social or professional circles. Now, let's differentiate this now from constructive criticism. It is all right to criticize. So this has advantages and disadvantages. They say it can be used to enforce political correctness and stifles constructive conversation because it just cancels people. You want them to get out, to be removed from their job. However, it also reinforces concepts of personal accountability. So remember that criticism online, when warranted, should also be done to improve the system. Now, as much as possible, we have to protect the good names of our colleagues and strive to protect also the good name of others. However, if complaints are brought to your attention, we are duty bound to bring it also to their attention. If it remains unaddressed, we have to refer to the proper forum. No? And we'll talk to you about that in the last slide. Now, in terms of interacting with patients, remember that when we give them medical advice online, ideally it's in the form of teleconsult. If it's just an informal discussion, do not do so because we do not have enough information. Make sure you do not go across boundaries. And once you do so, you establish a duty of care and there will be liabilities. And these are just some of the violations. Huh? As we said, don't talk, post images of patients, including the facility, even within a private Viber group, for example. All right. Last lines, political views. What do we do with political views? Can we express it to our patients? Sabi nila, we must be sensitive that there is an imbalance of power, that we're considered higher. We must refrain from initiating political conversations as much as possible. It doesn't say do not, but refrain. So they say you have to look at your relationship with the patient. Now, you must not allow differences in terms of your political issues to interfere with the care. And I think that's a given. Let's just talk about the last part of misinformation. We are careful about misinformation because these are unintentional mistakes and just presented as inaccuracies. This is falsehoods. We are careful about those who post with an intent to harm. This information, where you make up the information, malinformation, this is actual information, but you rearrange it in a way it becomes deliberately harmful. So if you have this information, malinformation, please make sure you call their attention and report it immediately. This is what you do when someone misinforms. Send a private message, be kind and stay curious, but be relatable. No? Don't appear better than someone else. Avoid giving too much data, like with vaccines, but still provide facts. Sabi nga nila, sometimes they might not see a yes the first time around, but we go for a slow yes. That means we don't get disheartened to correct it. The QR here is for climate change, how to talk to people about climate change, but it's a very good read if you do want to read it. Lastly, this was a survey in 2018. Is it ethical to discuss political beliefs? So 43% said no, but yes, and it depends actually was a bigger number of 56. So it means the guides actually have to be reported. That means the patient and not the doctor ideally should initiate the discussion, but the prerequisite is that you have a good relationship, as we said, with your patients. And when you express it, you judge whether it's intrusive and it affects the level of comfort of your patient. You discuss political matters in the context of where the conversations will affect them. And do not do this when patients are emotionally pressured. No? And as we said, we work towards advocating for reform and proper administration of laws, but we should be informed about the current political questions in order to be able to discuss them well with our patients. So, someone talking with a patient and avoiding political discussions is like someone looking at a tree in a forest because you're concerned about the tree and its concerns. But someone who may discuss politics is just looking at the forest because at the end of the day, the tree lives in the forest. And what happens to the forest may eventually impact that of the tree. So there is no right answer to say it's wrong to discuss or to say you should always discuss. But we have to have some involvement. Otherwise, we may end up like what happened in Germany. So remember, if things are not resolved, resolve them first with the person. But if they're unsettled, department, institution, PMA, and lastly, the PRC for asylum licensing issues. If they are disturbing your your equanimity as a person, what do? We mute. We can block, but we will know that we block them, so it may affect our future relationships. But please, if this is information, report so that the platform can do something to take them down. So in summary, I think I went 2.5 minutes over time. Let's recognize that the internet is an extension of our society and just apply the standards that you would do as you do in public. Refuse to empower abuse and harassment while online, and acknowledge that we have cultural differences, religious differences that have to be emphasized when we look at other people in order to understand where they're coming from. So I hope with that 47-minute lecture, I was able to discuss something new that you can use in improving your status in terms of the social media and cyberscape landscape. So thank you very much all for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Moral, for your informative, comprehensive, and nung nakikinig ako, sir, sa lecture, talagang parang, ay, oo nga, meron bang word na empathize? Nakaka-feel ka nung mga sinasabi ni sir na, oo nga, naranasan ko yan, naisip ko din yan, ito pala yung naging desisyon ko, tama pala yan sa mga daily encounters natin. So, sir, thank you for your discussion. May we now call on Dr. Trinidad. I'll ask the people who are watching, please type in your question to our Q&A, to our chat box, or to the Facebook, those who are watching us from Facebook Live. So you could give the questions to our speaker, Dr. Moral. May we ask Dr. Trinidad about the reaction to our lecturer. Dr. Moral, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moral, for the wonderful lecture. If I may add, sana may ganitong lecture during my time. No, before, because like I will borrow Dr. Moral's line earlier that my knowledge on social media is more of an experiential one rather than, like, I don't know if there's a formal training or formal workshop, but these sets of webinars really help. Yeah. So, hello. Is my audio clear na? Hello.
Now it's clear, Dr.
Ayan,
Trinidad.
okay na. Ayan, sorry.
Can you repeat what you were telling a while ago, because it was not clearly heard by our audience?
So the lecture was very, very insightful. I did hope that during my time, maybe as a med student or even a resident or a fellow, there were lectures like this na you would guide, because this is a new frontier for us, especially doctors, na social media, not all are social media aware, not all are social media savvy or tech savvy, as Dr. Moral said. Some might be digital immigrants. So my reaction, when I was asked to react, I was initially hesitant, because Dr. Moral is someone that I know that dabbles with ethics. He's an ethics expert, and I think I can never count the ethics or the etiquette that I broke in social media. Hello. Wait. Yeah. Hello. Is my audio clear? I changed my mic. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. Okay. So, my initial reaction was that I was hesitant first to react, because me as a person, I've probably broken many ethical rules or etiquette, social media etiquette that Dr. Moral just discussed in the past. I tried to keep it below to a minimum, but somehow, we're not perfect, and I still commit some of the errors. But I agreed, because this is something that I want to share also my experience. I couldn't say that I'm an influencer, but somehow I built a following already via Hello Kidney Facebook page. It started out as something, a personal advocacy to provide health information in social media, especially the kidney disease. Of course, inspired by Dr. Iris Isiptan and her Endocrine Witch FB page. And I felt that there is a potential for social media, because for one, it's a great equalizer It transcends geographic borders and classical hierarchies. Sa social media, wala kasing consultant ka, teacher ka, med student ka. In social media, parang nagiging equal kayo eh. Pare-pareho kayo na in social media. And it enables building connections. So for me, for example, Twitter has enabled me to connect to what I would say the gods of our fields. For example, nephrology. I've been able to meet and talk and collaborate with the different authors, trialists that we just read in our books before. And without social media, that wouldn't have been possible. I was able to write a few articles. I was able to participate in research projects na kung walang social media, nandito ka lang sa Pilipinas, baka hindi mo nagawa. So it really improves your stock. It upgrades your academic career, maybe your professional career. In terms of patients naman, it greatly increases your reach. So, for example, in a clinic where you just, for example, for a clinic, you see 10 patients for that period. So potentially you can just only reach what? Maybe 20 people, including the relatives or the bantays. But with social media, it amplifies our voice. So you can share your information. The information dissemination becomes much faster. You can potentially reach hundreds, even thousands, or even millions kung malaki na yung page mo with a single post or a single tweet. So this is an untapped potential that of social media that we are just starting to harness, or we are just starting to learn how to harness properly. And finally, I think those are the upsides. Now the downsides, although I am an optimist, and I think the upsides of social media for physicians is greater than the downsides. I would like to share my pointers, my experiential knowledge. Again, I'm not classically trained. In terms of Facebook, I am more active in Twitter for my personal thoughts. FB is just used for Hello Kitty and the dog pictures or the pictures of reunions dati nung wala pang pandemic of families. So for Twitter, as I've said, you have to really know your audience. The demographics for Twitter is different for TikTok, is different from Facebook, is different from YouTube. And I have YouTube, I have Facebook, I have Twitter, and you can't really translate what you post in FB, and then you post in Twitter and post it on YouTube, for example, and expect to get the same response. So my pointers, especially for our younger colleagues here watching, siguro it's also a summary of what Dr. Moral has already told us, that think before you tweet or post if it's FB. So is it necessary? Do you really need to publish that online? Sometimes, emotions can get the better of you, and even though it's not really necessary, you want to post it somehow. Then is it true? Is it backed by evidence? Is it backed by facts? So whether it's a political post, a rant, a health information post, make sure that it's true and you're not contributing to misinformation or disinformation. What goal will it achieve by posting? Can it be achieved by other means? So you have to think that. Will it be clear? Because as Dr. Moral said, hindi mo matitimpla yung tono mo. And like kung you're talking to a person, makikita mo yung intonation, yung facial expression. With social media, you're essentially anonymous, parang blank yung tone. So hindi mo talaga matimpla kung you're sarcastic, you're joking. What you say in social media may be prone to interpretation, as we all know, no? So marami ng mga fake news dyan. Your videos may be spliced, your quotes may be taken out of context, and etc. etc. Will it directly affect a person or a group? So mamaya your intention is pure, you want something na pure. However, hindi mo pala isip na ay itong post na to or itong tweet na to ay somehow makaka-affect pala sa isang group. So for example, autism. Mamaya may naapektuhan pala or may tinamaan na hindi mo naman minin but nevertheless tinamaan siya or isang particular group. And then finally, do you want to deal with the aftermath? So that means if you want to post something, then you should be prepared to deal with trolls. I remember in Hello Kidney, I posted about tuob. I was trying to correct that tuob does not help in COVID, no? And immediately, parang yun yung pinaka mataas na engagement ko, and not because of the good kind, but because of the many trolls that were telling me that I'm from Big Pharma, wala akong galang sa tawag mo dito sa traditional medicine, etc., etc. So you have to really be prepared. And if you're not prepared, or if this is not for the faint of heart, then maybe you shouldn't post. So I think those are my reactions. I really hope we have more lectures. I think it's very important. I think I saw in Twitter some time ago that a colleague was canceled. A young colleague was canceled because of some tweet. So I hope we can empower our people, not just the young ones, no, pati the digital immigrants, as Dr. Moral. Kasi in the end, talaga we want to be responsible users, responsible individuals, whether in the clinics or in the hospital, or again this is the third space in social media. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Trinidad, for your comments. So yung kay Dr. Trinidad, yung kanyang experience as a social media influencer, shinare niya, no? So, sir, for our speakers, we now go to the Q&A portion. I will ask both of the speaker for tonight, Dr. Moral and Dr. Carlos Trinidad, to please answer this question. So the question from Facebook is, how do you deal with or think of physicians who promote or even cause support in social media regarding anti-vax? Siguro, alam ko medyo difficult, pero yun nga, that's the reality. Siguro, sir, mga tips on how to handle those things na kasamahan natin who are calling out for no vaccination.
All right. So I think sabi nga nila, in the way Michelle Obama said, no? So when someone goes low, you go high. So always make sure your tone is respectful in the discussion. Talo ka parate if you get drawn into difficult discussions, no? Into active or fighting with someone online. That's one. Second is always work on facts. Sabi natin, don't dump. Minsan gagawin, idadump mo lahat ng studies, no? Lahat ng systematic reviews and everything else. They will not care for that kasi their mind is usually set with it. Do small contributions. Sometimes, for example, I do this, pero sabi nga ni Carlo, minsan aawayin ka talaga, especially with vaccines, na naranasan na namin yan. Kunyari, they put something like, it causes autism. You post one article beneath it lang. I'd like to refer you to this article. That's just as simple as it. We cannot convince them all the time quickly. Kaya nga sabi ni Dr. Kimberly Manning, one of the lecturers I love abroad, also says, go for a slow yes. Parang nanliligaw lang yan. Hindi mo mapapa-oo minsan the first time around, but go for a slow yes. But however, if it's persistent and it's potentially harmful, let's say ang dami niyang followers, sabi nga ni Carlo, mga 1 million followers, and they now start believing that, I think, that's a problem even in the US and here. We don't have teeth in terms of what the society can do. Because parang it's viewed as a way of free speech. But we really have to make sure that others understand the distinction between opinion and fact. So one is a scientific fact, and that may be his opinion entirely. So we do have to hindi dapat tayo sumuko, no? Kasi if sumuko tayo, at the end of the day, ang talo is yung patients natin. I'm sure Carlo has, iba yung aking kasing mga trolls dati, political kasi I do a lot of political posts, kaya din ako tinotroll. So kay Carlo is more of the two of, maybe Carlo has better info there.
Okay. Ito siguro, sir, this is something that I've learned during the early part of Hello Kidney, so circa 2019. medyo confrontational, sorry. So talagang medyo I defend, hindi po tama yan, ganyan. But I've learned na mapapagod ka lang, mauna kang mapagod. So what I do now would be yun nga, the diplomatic approach. I mean, hindi ka naman talo eh. You're the higher ground. You lay out slowly the facts. Again, don't dump nga kasi short ang attentions pa ng mga tao sa internet. And don't give up. I think the most important thing is we have to realize that other people see those comments or see those posts. And they may not necessarily agree with the one you are confronting. But if you see the facts, you might not convince the one you are confronting, but you can convince other people who are part of that conversation. Parang ganon. You are speaking not just to that person but to an audience. So kahit na kahit na away-awayin ka niya, pero na-convince mo naman yung ibang taong lurker. Yung sinabi ni Dr. Morano, lurker lang. Hindi sila pa-participate dun sa pakikipagbardahan mo. Pero you with the discourse, you stay with the level-headed discourse, with the facts. Pag ayaw nila, basta na-present mo na eh. Basta yun ang and then you might win other people, not really just in the audience, but are really actively listening. Yeah.
Not necessarily to the one you're it can be other people learning. So Carlo, a follow-up question, no? So question for Dr. Trinidad. Doc, before posting daw on social media regarding controversial issues such as ivermectin, soob, etc., how do you prepare in dealing with those trolls? How do you expect them? Do you prepare rebuttals or do you block them? Paano mo daw hinandle?
Okay.
Tip sa'yo.
As much as possible, I don't block. I believe in freedom of expression. So, kasi yun eh, parang pag blinak mo sila ng blinak, sasabihin nila ay hindi open tong doktor na to sa sa mga tao, baka lalo kang mabilify. What I do block are people who sell. I have lots of people who sell supplements or insurance. Yun, auto-block yun. Or yung mga nagmumura. Actually, may mga keywords ako na naka-auto-hide na sila kapag nagsabi sila actually ng, yes po, pag nagsabi po sila ng ivermectin, ng yung mga iba-ibang anti-vaxxer, any political name, no, automatic hide yon. So it's a time saver kasi hindi mo na kailangan silang isa-isahin. Hindi na magpapakita yung mga yon. They're only visible to the one who posted and their friends. However, dun sa iba na hindi nila friends, hindi nila makikita yon. So hindi rin nila realize na sila lang pala yung nakakakita. So win-win. Parang mute po sa Twitter, di ba sir? Hindi nila malalaman na hindi mo na pala nakikita yung mga kung ano-anong pinagsasabi nila. However, for those that do they do confront, I usually reply once or twice. Set my points. No? Kung talagang hindi ko sila maano, and then I just hide. No, I just hide them. I do not block them. And I get a lot of people na nagugulat ako. Many people are defending. Hindi si Dr. Trinidad. Kasi nakita nila yung kung nakita kanila na maayos yung pakikipag-confront mo, hindi ka tumapat sa level nila, hindi ka bumaba sa level nila, masasabi nila na this is a professional. Ganito pala to. So, maaring hindi mo sila ma-convince right away, pero they gain a newfound sense of respect siguro, so that the next time they are more receptive to listen to you. Parang ganon. So, wag nating madali kasi gusto natin instant na we win them over. Hindi naman ganon sa totoong buhay, di ba? Kahit nga magpainom tayo ng gamot na proven na, hirap pa rin tayo for some people kasi we have to really convince them. So, I think that's the way. Yun yung technique ko.
And add something just sabi ni Carla nga important kasi distinguish criticism from a troll. A troll has the intention to really rile you up para makuha ng reaction sa iyo. Wala siyang intention to really work on the issue. So pag troll yan, gutumin mo yan. That means I don't respond. Tapos sabi nga si Carla tama, hide. But the thing is, especially if it's harmful, I report. Kasi pag madami nag-report, matatanggal siya. So you remove them the platform. But hindi ikaw nagtanggal ang platform. Kasi if you block, makikita lang na block. Sabi nga nila, ang duwag pala nito, ayaw niyang makipag-respond. So it's hide for your mental sanity, for your mental health. That's one. And don't respond pag troll. Ang criticisms, please respond to them. Because sabi nga ni Carlo, ang audience mo sa comment section is not just the one you're responding to, but everyone else reading it. Malaking bagay yon. And sometimes that's important. Mas marami ka na convince. The troll is being paid for that. So, starve them.
Okay. Dr. Moral, sa inyo ko na lang po iba tong question na to. How to call attention of a senior physician who spread fake news or wrong information or may have been spreading information that is against PCP ethics?
Okay, so challenging yan kasi we live in an Asian culture that is basically very respectful of age, no? When in fact, the respect just go across the board. Whether you're young, you all deserve that degree of respect. If it's potentially harmful, the best way is find a colleague of theirs of their same age to be able to address it. Kasi usually mahirap, di ba? If you're coming from a very large age gap, find a colleague. If it's still not addressed, ayan, di ba? Sabi natin steps, refer to the department, refer to the society. That's why you have an ethics committee in the society. They should handle that. Mahirap man gawin, yung trabaho namin dati when I was part of the ethics committee, but it should be something that should be done.
Okay. Sir, I think both of you can answer this question. Can we repost any medical information but credit it to the author? Example, like a screenshot, ganun daw, sir.
Si Carlo ba?
Pareho kayo kasi you both post
Kaya muna, sir.
Quote daw nyo.
Okay. Well, the thing is, if it's posted online and it's public, it's open to the public, you can repost. That's according to lawyers also. It's not just from ethics, from lawyers. But, kunyari, personal, mga PM sa'yo, personal message, Viber conversations, you cannot because that's private. It is not open to the public. So if you're reposting, ideally repost the whole message as it is para wala ka ng attribution as to where it came from. But if you're doing a screenshot, best to put it, lalo kung crop kung saan ang galing. That would be the best way. It's just really giving credit to who the original poster was. Carlo?
Siguro ang i-add ko lang, sir, depende rin sa platform. So for example, Twitter, it's best to just retweet or quote tweet kesa yung i-screenshot mo pa kasi minsan ini-screenshot nila mga tao dyan, mga cloud chaser. So retweet na lang, quote tweet. Pag Facebook naman, kung may share button, you can just share and then put some of your thoughts doon sa post mo. There is also a thing about sometimes minsan kasi people are on private, friend mo sila pero naka-private sila. You might want to ask permission kasi pwedeng ayaw niyang i-share sa larger public yung post niya kasi nga naka-private siya. So yun. Pero yun, sabi ni sir, kapag naka-public, automatic public domain. So dapat hindi ka magalit kung ma-repost yan somewhere else kasi pinost mo na yan out there for everyone to see. Yan.
Okay. So Dr. Moral, what do you do with physicians who bites off other physicians' head? Practice and moral just because they have a different political view. Siguro sir, ito nga yung dahil sa politics na affect na yung pakikisama, tapos ginagamit ang social media para ilabas po yung mga hinahing or mga views nila. Tapos nagiging personal.
All right. So at the end of the day, dapat we have to think about it na when we talk about politics, sana our differences, but we all have the same goal, which is to have a better future by electing, hopefully, the right officials. And we will have our own preferences I'm talking about preferences based on what you decide upon, whether it's facts or opinions, that's going to be dependent on you. Pero to bite off someone's head online, I think maybe reflective of us. I always say I want to be reflective of the candidate I choose. So if I believe my candidate is honest and respectful, I will try to do the same. That's the first thing. Now, if they bite your head off, I think there's nothing to be lost in terms of reaching out. Maybe sending a private message. Don't engage them on the page itself. Na parang, I don't think you were so kind to me. Because otherwise, that fosters a bigger discussion. So reach out privately. if they still don't do that, as we said, no, for their sanity, just hide them. I have a relative who's like that. It's a relative who happens to be an anti-vaxxer and a conspiracy theorist for COVID. And I said, I'm a bit offended because I'm in the ICU and the COVID ward almost every single day or 5 to 8 hours, and you're saying we're just inventing this. No? So it's already a relative, and you can't choose your relatives, right? So what do? I basically hide them, mute them. I don't block them because at the end of the day, I will have to see them as relatives. No, but I need to keep it because you need to be functional. Kaya kasama mo ng break, you have to know how much you're going to give. So for this, reach out. If they don't respond, just hide them. It's not going to be your loss. It's their loss. No? So I think that's the important part here.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Moral. Siguro, sir, last question na po because we're running out of time. I would like both of you to answer this kasi we can relate to this. How can we address properly other physicians who post about their patients or rant about their patients in a way that they don't feel offended? Kasi minsan, sir, di ba may mga post yan na tukol sa pasyente, minsan negatively, nagrarant sila sa Facebook account or sa Twitter. Ano po paano nyo daw po i-correct ulit? Or how do you feel about these things?
Si Carla na mauna.
Okay, sige. It's really kind of hard because the rant, we have to categorize it. It's a rant because you're making a fun of a patient. May ginawa ba yung patient na hindi naman offensive? Baka naman may ginawang offensive, highly offensive yung patient and you're just letting off steam. So we have to clear about that. Essentially, dapat sa totoo lang, para madali ang buhay mo, huwag ka na lang mag-rant sa social media about that. However, kasi I've been guilty, honestly, a number of times already. But I make sure na it's something mostly offensive. It's not something na dapat yun nga walang patient identifiers as much as possible. It did not happen during the day. So hindi mo sasabihin na today a patient slapped me in the face, ganun. Hindi pa identify na agad yun. So maybe you can take away that. Anyway, the bottom line is dapat hindi talaga. But if a colleague is doing that and napapansin mo, puro ganun yung timeline niya, the best way is to approach kung close kayo, edi message mo siya. And then, itanong mo kung bakit ganun. Or siguro tanong nyo yung circumstance. Ano ba yung nangyari dun sa post mo? Ano ba yung exact circumstance? And then finally, kung hindi naman kayo close, maybe one of your friends can call the attention of your colleague, no? It's really hard, kasi minsan sasabihin nila, that's my freedom of expression. Okay. But it's kind of like it also trespasses on the rights of other people, like the patients, or the relatives. So yun lang yung input ko, sir Sir Patrick.
Dr. Moral, kayo po.
Yeah, yung sa akin, it's very similar to what Carla said. Ang addition ko lang probably is that normally, like, I have a lot of students, no? Kasi I do engage my ex-students, no? Online. But some of the students, I can see them on Twitter, no? Kasi you can see them. It's basically public kasi if it's open. So I do message them. And I always end it with, I'm just concerned that this might become an issue for you if someone raises this concern. So I make them feel that it's out, and that's true. It's out of an area of concern. Kasi pwede naman hindi ko napansinin yung post nila, right? But you take an effort to message them because you're concerned that it might reflect on them. And as I said, it also reflects on me teaching you ethics in med school, for example, because we had 2 lectures on that, one in first year and another in third year also. So that's one thing. And sometimes you realize, some people don't realize the circumstances when they make fun of a patient. Parang, kailan ba yung symptoms nyo? Matagal na. Yung parang paulit-ulit na parang, tinatanong kita yung tas you feel it's such a stupid response. But again, our patients respond to the questions we have very differently. So sometimes you present to them, baka hindi nakuha ng pasyente mo. And as Carlos said, baka mamaya it refers to that day. Kanina sa clinic, and it refers to that day. The identifiers are there. And we only have, according to the New York Times, 4.5 degrees of separation. That means makakaabot din niya sa pasyente through 4.5 jumps somehow. And that will be offensive. And we might have friends on our social media platform who are not doctors. And they might see, ganun pala yung mga doktor, pinagtatawanan nila yung ganung behavior. So we really have to be careful. We have to be careful about that process in terms of how we correct. Mahirap lang talaga for me, honestly, if it's someone who's more senior. Because of although most of my seniors happily listen to me, but it's not going to work for everyone. So in that case, sabi nga ni Carlo, look for a conduit na baka mas makinig sila just for that avenue.
Thank you. So this is a very fruitful night. Thank you, Dr. Moral and Dr. Trinidad, for sharing your time with us for our ethics webinar. Very informative, very timely. As nakaka-empathize tayo ngayon kasi nga very hook up tayo sa social media. So before we end, may we call on to give us the closing remarks, may we call on the President of the Philippine Society of Nephrology, Dr. Noel Castillo, to give us his message.
Thank you, Ginger. The digital domain presents many opportunities for growth and innovation for all of us physicians. As a powerful and burgeoning tool, it is critical to establish the ethical guidelines in its utilization. Handling it with prudence and responsibility is of utmost importance. Tonight's webinar highlighted and further emphasized this need. On behalf of the officers and the Board of Trustees of the Philippine Society of Nephrology, I'd like to express my deep gratitude to our speaker, Dr. Patrick Moral, who gave a very informative and thought-provoking lecture. This is actually the first time that I heard the term toxic positivity. We'll be looking at social media with a more enlightened perspective from now on. And thank you also to our reactor, the ever creative and innovative Dr. Nemo Trinidad, who is living proof that a nephrologist can be an effective cyber doctor. I would also like to thank the organizers of tonight's event, namely the Ethics Committee of the Philippine College of Physicians, headed by Dr. Susan Anunuevo de la Rama, the PSN Subcommittee on Ethics and Professionalism, headed by Dr. Irma Gueco, and the PCP Media Communications Committee, headed by our moderator, Dr. Ginger Samonte. Thank you and good evening.
So thank you, Dr. Noel Castillo. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. We just like to remind the fellows in training, yung reaction paper nyo, baka makalimutan po. I know that you are very active in listening to the lecture of Dr. Moral. Dr. Moral, Dr. Trinidad, thank you so much for sharing your time, your knowledge to us. And for those who have questions or any inquiries, please feel free to reach us to our social media account, yung ating website, yung ating secretariat, Facebook account, Twitter account, Instagram. So if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, and we hope that you really learn a lot from this lecture, no? Ang importanteng nalaman natin is the responsibility that we as doctors have. Hindi siya natatapos na nagagamot ka lang. It happens na lahat ng ating gawain, ating mga ginagawa, ay kailangan tayong maging maingat kasi nga bilang doktor, mataas ang pagtingin sa atin ng ating mga pasyente. With that, maraming salamat at magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Hanggang sa muli, ako po si Dr. Gingerlita Samonte, ang moderator ng ating webinar, and hope that you stay safe, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for watching our webinar and listening. Thank you.